Walt and I are here with you live to break down what we have learned. We're going to take your hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyWalt questions, because we're going to learn a good amount here, or at least we can only hope that we're going to be provided with some answers, Walt, and there's going to be tons of questions that are going to get asked in the aftermath of this press conference.
Will they answer any of the questions? We don't know. There was somebody, I'm sure they will start, but the FBI would tend to release a statement and then walk on. And keep in mind, again, this is the FBI office out of Tampa, not the lead FBI office out of Denver, which obviously would be the closest office to where the body was found in Wyoming 50 days ago. The body was found on the 19th. So it's been about 40 days, but it was about 50 days ago when, according to various documents, we can narrow down that Gabby Petito was allegedly killed. The victim of homicide, according to the FBI, the victim of strangulation, according to the medical examiner.
Live across all of our platforms here on WFLA Now, and we'll again break down what we have learned in the aftermath here on this stream, wherever you're watching from. JB Buno, Walt Buteau here with you live, and we're going to find out here alongside the rest of the world what has transpired today, what discovery has been made. And even though we're going to find out more, we are not going to find out everything, Walt, that the FBI knows. They're going to keep some information, perhaps most information, close to the vest. But they have called this press conference here for a very specific reason, and we're about to find out what that reason is.
And, keep in mind, they're going to keep information close to the vest, but it is very possible that they do not know as much as we might think they know. This is not a television show. This is real life. Perhaps the remains were discovered this morning. It's now been only 5 hours since they've had those remains. So what do they know? They may not know a whole lot. They may be telling us very basic information because that is all they have. Obviously, no forensic study on these remains. We do know when Gabby Petito's remains were found, it was, I believe, another day or so. That was on the 19th that the news conference was held, that the remains were found, and they identified them as Gabby Petito, but we did not find out the manner of death until, I believe, a day or so later. So patience with the investigators at this point. And the big question is, does this close this case? Is this Brian Laundrie? And do we now have a closed case where we have a homicide but no live defendant to prosecute?
And let's
find that out.
Begin right there. That is the big question. The partial human remains discovered today at the Carlton Reserve here in Myakkahatchee. Is that Brian Laundrie? Is that Brian Laundrie? So many people, of course, have been on the lookout for Brian Laundrie. There have been sightings. Here comes the FBI. We're back here with you live on WFLA Now immediately after the press conference.
Very good. Good afternoon, Josh Taylor with the Northport Police Department. Thank you for your continued diligence on this story, and thanks for your patience. As you know, the Northport Police Department has worked collaboratively with the FBI throughout this investigation. Special Agent Michael McPherson is going to make a prepared statement. There's not going to be any questions today, but hopefully it answers some of them. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael McPherson. I'm the Special Agent in charge of the FBI Tampa Division. As you're aware, the FBI and the Northport Police Department and our state and local law enforcement partners have been searching the area of the Carlton Reserve for Brian Laundrie, a person of interest in the murder of Gabby Petito. Earlier today, investigators found what appears to be human remains, along with personal items such as a backpack and notebook belonging to Brian Laundrie. These items were found in an area that up until recently have been underwater. Our evidence response team is on scene using all available resources to process the area. It's likely the team will be on scene for several days. I know you have a lot of questions, but we don't have all the answers yet. We are working diligently to get those answers for you. We are grateful for the dedication and professionalism of the Northport Police Department, along with our partners from the state and local agencies. Complex investigations such as this cannot be accomplished by one agency alone, but there are just too many agencies to name them all here today. Portions of the Myakkahatchee Creek Environment Park and Carlton Reserve will remain closed to the public until further notice. This is an active and ongoing investigation, so we ask the public to maintain distance from any law enforcement personnel, equipment, vehicles, and other related activity for the safety of the public and to protect the integrity of our work. We have no additional comment related to today's activities. Our FBI Denver office is the lead investigative agency, and all future inquiries should be directed to them. We appreciate the tremendous support from the public and continue to ask for your assistance in bringing this investigation to close. Thank you.
Was the backpack found near the body? Justice for Gabby! 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 Justice for Gabby!
Breaking news on WFLA Now. Here's JB Buno.
You hear the calls. Justice for Gabby. After the FBI announces information that we have been receiving over the last several hours. Partial human remains discovered here today at the Carlton Reserve near a backpack and a notebook. A backpack and a notebook that might belong to Brian Laundrie, a scene that is now going to take several days for them to comb through, an evidence response team with the FBI and other law enforcement agencies here at the scene in Florida. Hey folks, JB Buno here with you live on WFLA Now. Let's show you that area here again. You saw that there were folks there on lawn chairs. Yes, lawn chairs that have, the folks that have been outside of the Carlton Reserve or really outside of Myakkahatchee Walt. Just goes to show how many people have been following this story around the world and wanting updates. And we were talking about it right before the press conference began. The answer that we wanted as far as the question that was hopefully going to be asked, and we didn't get an opportunity here to ask any questions, was, is this Brian Laundrie? We did not learn that here today.
We did not, and I would like to hear the sound again. Did he say might? He worded it, it seemed, I would say oddly, did he say might have belonged to Brian Laundrie? Or did he say, he might have gone a step farther than that it was, but he did say notebook, he did say backpack. Look, the notebook, by the way, if it's Brian Laundrie's, is fascinating, right? Because what could we learn from that notebook? What will be released from that notebook by the FBI? But he also pointed out, and we've said this, you and I have both said this, we've all said this, very complicated investigation involving multiple jurisdictions and multiple agencies that are trying to coordinate and figure out these answers. He also was somewhat apologetic to the public.
Hold on a second. I have another feed here. I want to hit the touch screen and bring up just a couple different feeds here. There just to show everybody here and take a look here. Yet another shot that we have here now going across the front area of the Carlton Reserve. You can see that there are some folks that have gathered here and they're speaking to police. Let's just listen in here for a second, if we can. There isn't much audio on this feed. I just punched it up. So again, just showing people have been coming from across the country to be here, Walt, to be part of the Justice for Gabby movement. You can see the lawn chairs and folks that have brought their own belongings here to camp out here today. You can't go into the reserve, but there's nothing that says that you can't be outside of it. And you can see that a lot of folks here are showing pictures and sounds like they are shouting at police. Let's see if we can listen. There's no audio on this feed, okay? I've just confirmed it.
I saw our photographer from Channel 8 take the mic, so there might not be a mic at all.
And it might be audio that, again, we don't know what kind of language is being used here, but right. You can see that they're not shouting at police as much as they are shouting at photographers
it looked like,
that are here that have gathered.
The news conference ended with them chanting "Justice for Gabby" to the investigators. Kind of odd, I think. And I get the frustration, but you're chanting to the investigators who are trying to figure out what they have, and the worst thing they could possibly do is say it's Brian Laundrie without certainty and then find out it's not. That would be worse than us doing that.
I want to clarify. I believe that we can have it now that they did say the backpack and other items, the backpack and the notebook are items that belong to Brian Laundrie. And this is now consistent now with Stephen Bertolino's comments earlier on today. That Chris and Roberta Laundrie were there at the reserve this morning. That's Brian Laundrie's parents participating in the search with the Carlton Reserve being open, with Myakkahatchee being open. Anyone can go. And Chris and Roberta Laundrie went to an area, as we understand it, that Brian Laundrie was known to have been in the past. They go to this area, and with the water receding, Mother Nature, with the water receding, it exposes something that wasn't, or at least was in an area that was previously underwater, exposes something that law enforcement or searchers had previously not seen there before.
Yeah, and he did not say whether they had searched there before.
And he said that they found articles, and now we know more details on what those articles are.
And it would be interesting to know if they had searched that area before. We don't know that. It is at the entrance to the Myakkahatchee.
Yeah,
I got to practice that word. At the entrance there. But photographer Jim Hockett, who's been up in Eagle 8, although he's coming down now because there's a restriction now, he said the tent is in the reserve north of Myakkahatchee. So it must be where the two pieces of property are sort of join each other. Myakkahatchee is 160 acres. The reserve is 25,000. So it's right there where those two areas meet. And that white tent, according to Jim Hockett, investigative photographer Jim Hockett, is the white tent is in the reserve right near Myakkahatchee River area.
I'm going to see if we can get an update on where Eagle 8 HD is. Or no, I'm sorry. Wait, no, I'm just now remembering. Can't. Okay, down, so right. Eagle 8 HD. Yes, it's just occurring to me again. I always want to hit that button here as far as going to our news chopper. Can't. Temporary flight restriction. The FAA has put it up, and we can't fly over Myakkahatchee right now. So news choppers, and I would imagine that TFR is going to be up for days, because if this is going to take days to comb through this scene, and forensics and the medical examiner's office and everyone going through this scene here to be textbook as far as their approach to handling what they have discovered at the Carlton Reserve, it is going to be it's going to be behind not closed doors, but you know what I mean. It's not going to be in view of the public because of the temporary flight restriction, and we can't get any cameras in there. The park itself is closed. I want to show you another live feed that we have up. Always tapping into as many live feeds as we can here. And yes, this folks know this front door quite well. This is the home in Northport, the home of Chris and Roberta Laundrie, Brian Laundrie's parents. They were at the reserve this morning. They are no longer there. As we understand it, we have been informed that they are home. And Walt, they are parents who, based on what we have learned at this stage, might have lost a child.
Yes.
We do not know whether or not those remains. Michael McPherson, the FBI agent who briefed the media, did not answer whether or not those remains are in fact Brian Laundrie's remains. They'll have to, of course, go by the book and go through the process that they have. But inside this home right now are two parents who have, just like Joe Petito and just like Nicole Schmidt, might have lost, well, they lost a child. Gabby's, Petito's parents lost a child, but we could be dealing with another set of parents here in tremendous grief from potentially losing their child. A 23-year-old man, a 22-year-old woman that were engaged to be married. That is Justin Shecker there in front of the home. Justin Shecker, known to our WFLA Now audience as well. And there is so much difference between, I want to make this very clear, there is so much difference between what the Petito and Schmidt families experienced and what the Laundrie family experienced. They went through completely different experiences, but if this is Brian Laundrie, they are two parents now, and for Gabby's family, it's a 4 co-parenting unit with Tara and Jim in mind. It's two families now that are going through tremendous loss and are heartbroken over what has transpired over the last couple of months. You have to remember, July 2nd, Walt, They're embarking on a cross-country road trip. They're leaving together, seemingly in love, going across the country, experiencing the world. And here we are now. It's October 20th, and we find these partial human remains. And it's a story of tragedy. No matter how we got to this destination, the destination and the conclusion here, this is a tragic story, and one that we don't know. We're going to ask this to our audience. Are we any closer to finding out if there's going to be justice for Gabby Petito? I'd be very curious what our audience has to say about that.
You know, somebody on Twitter contacted me, just pointed out the notebook, if it is there and if it's Brian's, well, we know it's Brian's. If there are writings in there, will it be soaking wet and unreadable? If it's not soaking wet and it is readable, this is a guy who there had been various media reports had some really dark writings, and his music on Spotify, sort of dark leanings. He was reading this book that was a little dark, and you just wonder if what he expressed in that notebook, and what condition is the notebook in. Keep this in mind. The FBI has every type of expert you can imagine. I covered a trial where we heard from a duct tape expert who could determine that one piece of duct tape came from a roll that was found in the back of a suspect's trunk. So they have ways, I'm sure, to examine paper that we can't imagine. We keep saying this isn't a TV show, but some of those things you see on TV, those things are real. So
but some of those TV shows, like I'm just going to throw this one out there, Forensic Files, like these are rooted in real cases and real tactics employed by law enforcement.
So I mean that notebook becomes extremely important if there are writings about this case, because when people want justice for Gabby, I'd like to. What does that mean? Does that mean they want Brian Laundrie tried and to face a jury? Or I don't know what justice means in this case. I know what it means literally as an adjudication, which we may not get if this is Brian Laundrie. But what do they mean, justice for Gabby? Like, dive into that for me. What do we mean by that? Do we want Brian Laundrie prosecuted? Is that what it means? Or is it, do we want to know why? Why did he do it? When did he do it? How did he do it? Or what made him do it? What is his motive, if there is one? Does the notebook lend us to that? We'll find out, I guess.
Justice to me, and I'll just share what I feel, and I'm very curious. I know that Gabby Petito's family has been watching our streams all day. If Gabby's family is watching, hello there to you guys. I've been in contact with them, but justice to me is there's a sense of balance that comes in with justice. A heinous act occurs, and then what is done to counteract that? What is done in the aftermath of that heinous act to balance out the scales? You've seen it, of course, in textbooks, and you've seen it, of course, in iconography, the scales of justice, right?
Right.
What does that look like going forward now as far as the Justice for Gabby cause? What we're going to do is we're going to open up the WFLA Now Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and Twitter comment sections. We're going to feature your comments and your questions using hashtag HeyJB or hashtag HeyWalt. We'll be here with you live for a bit longer. We're going to stay here with you live. We have just such a large audience here, and we want to try to get to as many questions and comments as possible. But where does this fit into the Justice for Gabby cause? You heard at the end of the press conference the cries for justice for Gabby. Where are we with this? Where are we? Are we farther from justice? Is justice eluding this cause, or are we closer to justice? I'd like to hear your comments here on the Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and on Twitter in those comment sections, and we can feature your comments here on screen.
And what does justice mean? I'd like more than just we want justice. I get that. That's simplified. But what does that mean? Does that mean when you say there's not going to be any justice, does that mean you wanted him prosecuted to the full extent of the law, or does it mean something else? When you say you want justice, do you mean we want fairness? I want to, because I get what
right,
you might mean.
Because justice in the eyes of some is eye for an eye, and that's not necessarily how our system works here in the United States. Clearly, it's not an eye for an eye sort of system. If you go and you stab somebody, there isn't a judge in America that is going to say, or a judge anywhere for that matter, that's going to say, okay, now the other person gets to stab back. That's just not how it works. But what does justice? You're right. What does justice look like? And are we further from it? Is it closer? I think we're closer to answers, but are we closer to justice? we're going to, again, open up, and it takes a few buttons here with as large of an audience as we have. It takes a few buttons here that I'm going to press to feature your comments here on WFLA Now. For those of you who have been with us here before, you're going to hear this for probably the second, third, or 40th or 50th time, but I have to repeat this over and over again to our audience as far as how this works. You see the hashtags on our screen. You see them here on the yellow stripes, hashtag HeyJB, on the right side of your screen, hashtag HeyWalt. And if you use those hashtags, that is a means for us to grab your comment from social media, and we can feature it here and animate it here on screen. If you do not want your picture and your profile picture, your name and your comment to be featured on screen, just don't use the hashtag, and we'll let your comment scroll idly on by up screen. But we're going to start now by taking your comments. While I look for some of these comments here, Walt, what do you think the response is going to be to what we have just learned from the FBI? I would imagine the first thing that people are going to say is, we want more information, we want to know more. But this has been a story that has tugged at the emotional heartstrings of so many people. Where do you think the public is after this FBI press conference?
Well, they're not happy. There's no doubt they're not happy. But I hope, there's as many unreasonable comments as I've seen out there. There are also a lot of reasonable people who have some empathy, like we've talked about for the Laundries, about the protests in front of it. And then there are others who say, no, protest. They did something wrong. We know they did. So I hope people understand that, there's an old saying in journalism, get it first, but before you get it first, get it right. And there's nothing more that would be more have a bigger negative impact than if the FBI sort of said, oh yeah, we think it's Brian Laundrie, or it's Brian Laundrie, and then it turns out to not be Brian Laundrie. I mean, that just can't happen. So and he said it's a complicated case. That particular FBI agent is out of the Tampa office. This is a Denver-led investigation. So again, he does not want to speak for Denver, and I'm sure Denver wants to make sure they know exactly whose body this is, because and that means the search continues, right? The search continues, and that if again, I think tipsters should realize if you see Brian Laundrie, the tip should still come in, right? I mean, let's be logical here. We don't know that that's Brian Laundrie. We know it's a backpack. We know it's a notebook, but we don't know that's Brian Laundrie yet. And I think people will be frustrated, but they should understand the investigation takes its time because they want to make sure it's right and accurate.
Let's start with this one, and this would be a direct opportunity for us to get some information. But Melissa Mariuti, hashtag HeyWalt, hashtag HeyJB. Hopefully Brian left answers in that notebook in regards to all of our questions that we have.
No doubt. And if it's legible, if it can be read, if it was in the water, can you read it right away? But paper, again, the FBI has probably I don't think there's a probably about it. It's the best crime lab in the world.
Let's also talk about we don't know this is Brian Laundrie. We don't know this is Brian Laundrie. If this is Brian Laundrie, if we don't know the manner of death. People are commenting already, blowing up hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyWalt, saying and wondering aloud or theorizing aloud that this is suicide. Is the notebook potential for it's not a piece of paper, it's a notebook, but is that the potential for what in other cases would be called a suicide note? That's another thing that people are again, just chiming in with some of the things that people are saying here in the social media comment section, but this is very much some of the comments that we're getting in here. Let's get to some more questions and comments, and we asked you to define what you think justice is in this case. Tammy Lynn, hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyWalt. Justice is someone being held accountable for murdering Gabby and helping him get away. Let's not understate that or miss that they called it a murder. Michael McPherson called it a murder. It has otherwise been disclosed.
Did he say murder today?
No, I wrote it down. A person of interest, and he identified Brian Laundrie. I wrote it in my notes because I wanted to be certain. Michael McPherson, FBI, said that Brian Laundrie is a person of interest in Gabby Petito's murder. Now, while that might not seem like a big revelation to people joining us and saying like, JB, why are you making a big deal out of that? It's a big deal in that when it's acknowledged by the FBI that it's now not a homicide, a murder case, and that he's a person of interest in murder, which we haven't ever heard those words uttered before. He was a person of interest in an FBI-led criminal investigation into the disappearance of Gabby Petito. And of course, then it would come out that the federal arrest warrant was issued for the credit card, the alleged credit card or debit card fraud. But to hear those words, Brian Laundrie, person of interest in Gabby Petito's murder, we can't overlook that. That was a moment in this press conference that didn't offer all that much, but that stuck out to me because it's the first time we haven't heard much from the FBI. And we haven't even heard Josh Taylor, the spokesperson for Northport Police, utter those words. But we had it here today from FBI agent Michael McPherson speaking to Mike Kahachi.
Could it be a slip of the tongue? Should he have said homicide? And keep in mind, here's what we're talking about.
Yep.
Murder. Now, again, a strangulation. I'm pretty sure strangulations have to almost always be first degree because intent does not seem to, I'm not an attorney, but intent does not seem to be a question in a strangulation because of the length of time. Does the FBI now consider this a murder and we don't know that? It's initially a homicide, which would include murder, second-degree murder, criminally negligent homicide, manslaughter. This is with a strangulation, there's intent. So maybe they do now consider it a murder. I don't know, or a slip of the tongue, but very, very perceptive of you to pick that up, JB. Also, well, we have to be perceptive with the comment in front of us. Tammy saying, and helping him get away. Now, that is a comment. That is a comment that, as we see Cassie Laundrie come up here on screen, but that is a comment that is alleging, Tammy is alleging that Brian Laundrie wasn't alone as far as leaving and as far as eluding authorities. Now, you just saw Chief Todd Garrison, who was there at the press conference as well. I don't know if you caught that, Walt, but Chief Todd Garrison, Chief of Northport Police, was there as well. He was the one who famously said, or infamously said, we know where Brian is, and he was there at that press conference today. But again, Tammy alleging here that Brian had help. Did Brian have help? Was Chris or Roberta Laundrie involved in him leaving the home? Was there somebody else that aided him? These are questions now that get tackled in the future, but I don't know if necessarily how much that is going to satisfy getting answers to that question. I don't know how much that satisfies those that have been crying out for justice for Gabby. I don't know what that would mean to Nicole or Joe Petito or Nicole Schmidt, Gabby's mom and dad. We don't know, but it's interesting there are so many out there that still today believe that Brian's disappearance didn't occur without help. In a third-degree felony in Florida, the parent has immunity against being prosecuted for accessory after the fact in a third-degree felony. If this is a murder, which it appears to be, it does not appear to be a manslaughter or a criminal. It doesn't appear to be an accident. You can't accidentally strangle someone. If they somehow believe or can prove that Brian did it, and that becomes difficult, you could get them for accessory. You can, first or second, you can get parents for accessory. Keep in mind, nobody's been charged. I do not believe there's no immunity in a federal case, though. So if this is a federal case, and obviously you'd have to be able to link the son to the crime, right? How do you do that if the son is no longer alive? So those things come into play. Now, obstructing justice or getting in the way or lying to police, I don't think it would have to have any tie to the real base crime here, which is the homicide. So I get what she's saying there. But again, let's really emphasize this. No one has been charged with anything except Brian Laundrie for the debit card fraud with Gabby Petito's cards. Let me ask you this. If this is Brian Laundrie, and if Brian Laundrie is determined to be deceased, what happens to the Gabby Petito homicide murder investigation? What happens to, does
is there ever a day where Brian Laundrie gets named as a suspect, even if he is deceased? How does the process evolve now that we have potentially Brian Laundrie deceased in addition to Gabby Petito?
I think that notebook's key. What's the notebook say? If the notebook somehow says I had to do it or whatever it says, that's a key. Can they read the notebook? It's interesting. You said earlier in this broadcast how this story, and you're right, has had so many odd twists. The camping trip, the fact they bought the camper at that point, the Mustang,
the flight home,
that was a rumor that turned out to be true. The social media impact on it, that the last time she was seen alive was by a social influencer, a social media influencer out of New Orleans. And that the van was spotted by a social media influencer out of Spring Hill, Florida, and that this text comes into play, and now as we look forward with this case, and that notebook becomes such a key part of this. Let me put this question to you, JB, real quick. Here's another one that came up to me. How about this? Let's say it's not Brian Laundrie. How big's that notebook? Becomes almost bigger if it's not Brian Laundrie, because it theoretically has.
What you're saying is, if I want to make sure I follow this correctly before I say something, what you're asking is if the remains aren't Brian's, but the backpack and the notebook are Brian's?
Yes, the notebook now becomes a key to theoretically finding Brian Laundrie.
The
notebook's the biggest story. That notebook is huge.
I'll ping pong back to you. Let's just pretend for a moment. What if the remains weren't found? What if this had just been the backpack and the notebook?
Right. It's big. What's in the backpack? What is in that backpack? But that notebook is that's a big deal from a guy, I believe, who fancied himself to be a writer of sorts. Correct?
That adds up. Yes.
Yeah. So someone like that puts their, they put their real thoughts in that notebook. So if they can read it, that's going to be interesting. But here, let me ask you this. I don't know the answer. We have many FBI agents that we've talked to. Does the FBI have to release that notebook to anybody other than the family? Do they have to release the details? If Brian Laundrie's no longer with us, I don't believe he can go from, well, I guess he could if they found more evidence. He could go from person of interest to suspect, but he's no longer with us. So that's another question. Can he go from person of interest to suspect if he's dead, even if they find more evidence? What would be the use of that other than, I don't know. What would be the use of that? A lot of questions. News conference was a surprise.
I'll be honest. I'll be honest. I was surprised that the notebook now is going to be the subject of threads online, comments.
Yes.
The amount of attention that this notebook is going to receive. This is going to be the most famous notebook in the world, or the most infamous notebook in the world. Everyone's going to want to know its contents.
Right. Everyone's
going to want to know whether it's intact.
Right.
And we had a commenter here, and the honest part, I was surprised that they even gave us that. I would have. No one would have blinked an eye if they had just said, "We found a backpack."
Interesting. Really good point. Very good.
We
point.
just found a backpack, and then we found remains, and that was the contents of the press conference itself. Was just those two announcements. But the notebook is an add-on now. That is, I already see it. It's happening in real time, interactively here. I'm watching it happen on all these platforms. People are now asking, what is in the notebook? It's going to be a hashtag in no time. What was in the notebook?
Right.
And so I'm surprised, to say the least, Walt, that piece of information was released by Michael McPherson of the FBI, because I didn't think that they were going to get that detailed as far as what they found here at the scene and in Myakkahatchee. There was another comment here, and Kay is right on the money. Kay Dean. Hashtag HeyJB. Hopefully the backpack was waterproof and the notebook is still intact. Or she says intake, but that's intact.
Right. I guess I saw it as two items side by side. I saw it as backpack and notebook.
No, that could very well
could be the notebooks in the backpack. But that makes your point even more important. Is that this is the FBI? They don't release details. I hope you folks understand.
I'll go as far to say that I am shocked that they put out the detail about the notebook.
And I'm not criticizing them for not releasing details. I get it. I fully get it. But yes, was the backpack must have been waterproof, but was the notebook in the backpack?
I don't know.
No?
I have backpacks that aren't waterproof. Well, what do you mean? Hold on. What do you mean by waterproof now? Right. So let's talk about this.
Is it a camping backpack
I'm very grateful for Kay for bringing this up.
Yeah.
Because waterproof. Yeah, if I have a backpack and it rains outside, I don't think the contents of my backpack are gonna get wet. What's in the backpack is gonna get wet. But if that backpack is submerged underwater for days or weeks on end, is water gonna trickle in there and is the backpack contents just gonna be also submerged in water? So waterproof could mean that it just it's not going to, from rain, or it goes back to, yes, conversations about like your iPhone. Your iPhone is waterproof, but up to what depth? They have different grades now for your electronic devices as far as, you can have your iPhone, modern day iPhones, like you can have your iPhone underwater up to 3 feet of water for a period of 30 minutes or something like that, and it'll stay functional. But same for the backpack. So the backpack also, if it's completely submerged underwater, how long, or is there a length of time before the contents of that backpack also too get submerged? And also, it sounds silly that we're bringing this up, but does the backpack float?
Right.
Or is it? I think if it floated. If the backpack I don't think the backpack floated. I'm almost answering my own question. I think it was underneath the surface of the water. But Walt, your point is perfect as far as, was the notebook in the backpack or was it found alongside the backpack? And more important than even that question, how intact is the notebook? Was it thoroughly destroyed by the water that has fallen in Myakkahatchee, or especially over the month of September?
We don't know, though, how deep of water that these remains were found in, or how deep the water was for these remains. We don't, you know what I mean? Like, it could have been a shallow situation, but yeah, this point is very important because that notebook's a very vital piece of information.
Now, I want to bring up this comment that just came in from Alicia Seegers. #HeyJB, #HeyWalt. The type of bag they found is called a dry bag. They're silicone based, but I don't remember them saying it was a dry bag. Now, a dry bag to me is different than a traditional I think of a backpack and a dry bag of being two separate things. But I don't remember them saying during the press conference that it was a dry bag. Did that?
No, I don't know where that came out, but
I remember hearing a backpack. And so, Alicia, I'm just gonna, if I may, I'm just going to correct you and just say that the backpack was what they found was a backpack, and we hope it's a dry bag. If it's a dry bag, so a dry bag is designed to, if it's even out to sea, there are dry bags that if you literally cast them out to sea, there's little that is ever going to be done to allow water into that bag. But and yes, they're silicone based, and they're great at keeping water out. That's what they're designed to do. But that's different to me than a backpack, and so we don't know.
And then what else is in the bag? I mean, it's interesting to me, again, why the release of just those two items, backpack and notebook. It's very interesting that they released what's there and not the rest of the items in the backpack.
More comments on what is justice for Gabby Petito. To you, wherever you're watching from, what does justice mean to you? Stephanie Hahn, #HeyJB, justice is giving answers by admitting what you did and that it is wrong. But I'm going to hop off of Stephanie's comment here and say that a deceased person can't admit a fault unless it's in the notebook.
Right.
And he can't admit that it was wrong unless it's in the notebook. But, I'll jump off of Stephanie's comment here. Let's say it's Brian Laundrie. Let's say that Brian Laundrie committed murder and murdered his fiancée, Gabby Petito. And let's say that there is legible content within the notebook. And that legible content reads as something along the lines of, I did it. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Is that justice? Is admission justice? Is him saying, I did a terrible thing, I was wrong, and I can't live with the knowledge that I claim the life of somebody who I loved? Is admission of guilt justice? Because what Stephanie is saying here, justice is giving answers by admitting what you did and that it was wrong. But does that satisfy the people that are calling for justice for Gabby?
I don't think it does, and I think when people call for justice for Gabby, they want, like you said, an eye for an eye. I think is what they want, and I mean, if he's no longer with us, I guess they got that. Do they want to know more? They want to ask him why, how he could do that, why he could do that. I don't think, you and I, we cover these things, so I'm sure you have too. We've sat in courtrooms where there's a suspect, terrible crimes, and you learn a lot really about the suspect during the sentencing, because that's when their whole life stories played out, and the defense attorney paints pictures of, they're always sad stories. And a good defense attorney, I had a defense attorney having me feel empathy for a guy that killed an entire family. I didn't feel it long, but I'm human, So my point is, is that what people want? They want to hear that in a courtroom. They want him to be locked up. They want the death penalty. I completely get it. I think all of us feel we know Gabby Petito, right? She's our little sister. She's my friend. She reminds me of my daughter. And so, you're wringing your hands. You just don't get it. How could anybody do this to this girl? And now we'll never know. We may never know who. We may only be able to suspect who did this to this girl, because we're not going to hear from Brian. We're not going to hear, theoretically, if that's Brian. We're not going to hear from Brian. We're not going to hear from attorneys. So I get it. I get that. I get that call for justice. But I don't know that he'd ever admit what he did, whether he was alive or dead, right?
I'm sorry, I was texting somebody. Say that again.
I don't. The admitting part, I don't know that we'd ever know that he admitted it, whether he was alive or dead, right?
Well, unless it's a notebook, right?
The notebook could be. There you go. But does the notebook include?
What does the notebook contain?
Yeah.
The internet right now is. I'm seeing it. The notebook now is. I'm shocked that the FBI released that piece of information. And I'm going to go to another comment. Stephanie, thank you for chiming in here. And I think we lost Stephanie's comment. Oh no, I think that. Oh, there it is. Okay. And I want to bring in this more recent one that just came in. Melissa Russo, #HeyJB, #HeyWalt. I think the FBI brought up the notebook only because there's important evidence they can get from it. But even so, if that was a fact, and Melissa, I'm speaking to you here, even if that's so, they'd have there's no benefit to them. No benefit whatsoever to announce it to the public.
It's the opposite of a benefit, because now there's going to be a clamoring to release the notebook, whether that's Brian Laundrie or not. There are people chanting at the FBI, justice for Gabby, when I don't understand those chants at the FBI, because I'm sure the FBI wants justice for Gabby too. But there are people who there's going to be a demand for that notebook from the media, from everybody. Why mention it? It's interesting. It's an interesting thing that they mentioned that there was a notebook.
Staying on the notebook, back to more justice responses here in just a second.